Alliance partners to Lula da Silva's new government in Brazil move forward negotiations with opposition governors to form a new federative pact 2023. Nicaragua witnesses the day of reflection prior to the municipal elections to be held on Sunday. And in Russia, oil and gas companies agreed to expand energy cooperation with Iraq in spite of the difficult political and military situation in the country. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the FTS studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Interlocutors of the alliance with the new government of Lula da Silva in Brazil are advancing in negotiations with opposition governors to compose a new federative pact 2023. The alliance that accompanies President-elect Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva is looking for opposition governors to pacify their relationships and compose a new government that manages to articulate with Congress. Out of the 27 governors elected at the beginning of October, only 10 belong to parties that were part of Lula's candidacy. In that sense, we must remember that Lula denounced during his campaign that Jair Bolsonaro did not listen to the governors or mayors and only listened to his own sympathizers. In Sao Paulo, pro-Bolsonaro Tarcísio de Freitas won, who according to sources is in contact with Lula through the former minister Gilberto Kassab. The President of Colombia Gustavo Pedro approved Friday Law 418 on public order, which allows negotiations between the government and illegal armed groups. The law will allow the creation of a high-level commission to determine the type of organization, whether to take the path of political dialogue, submission, or acceptance. This instance will allow the study of the constitutional legal structure that could pave the way for talks and negotiations. After the presidential approval, the Colombian president stressed that it is now up to the Peace Commissioner, Daniel Rueda, to implement most of these regulations. This comes at a little less than 2 weeks before the resumption of talks between the national government and the National Liberation Army. In fact, it is expected that in the next few days, the names of the members of the negotiating teams will be announced. On Friday, Colombian President Gustavo Pedro led the commemoration of the 37th anniversary of the occupation and retaking of Justice Palace. The Colombian President and Vice President Francia Marquez attended the Eucharist at the Primate Cathedral of Colombia in Bogota in a ceremony that was also attended by religious and judicial authorities, as well as survivors and relatives of the victims. The presence of President Gustavo Pedro was highly symbolic, since the head of state was a militant of the M19 guerrillas who took over the palace in 1985. The retaking by Colombian army left at least 90 dead, among them several magistrates and some 11 missing. 37 years after those events, the survivors continue demanding truth and justice.
They entered violently, yes, but they asked for dialogue and they didn't get it. What they gave us all was only a massacre, a brutal armed seizure. Well, I've been struggling a lot to know the truth and to get justice done. I believe that for us relatives to be able to forgive, we need to know what happened. We buried our dead and they closed the case. So we need to know the truth so we can mourn our dead properly.
Nicaragua witnesses the day of reflection prior to the municipal elections to be held on Sunday, where regional and local authorities will be elected. According to the electoral calendar, this Saturday marks the silence after the end of the campaign, where no organization may hold political rallies in view of the municipal elections for mayors, vice mayors, and councilmen in the 153 municipalities of the country. On its Twitter account, the Supreme Electoral Council stated that it reaffirms its commitment with democracy and stability in order to guarantee a free, fair, and transparent process. In Bolivia, the meeting of the Technical Commission that will set the definite date for the population and housing census in the country is underway. Since 11 a.m. local time this Saturday, more than 50 specialists have been meeting in the city of Trinidad in the department of Beni to set the dates for the census. The table includes 11 representatives from public universities, 9 from municipal associations, 10 from municipalities of the capital cities and the highlands, 9 from the governor's offices, and 6 from the indigenous autonomies. The Technical Commission's task is to draw up a plurinational meeting and to reach a consensus regarding the census stipulated for 2024. The table was inaugurated on Friday night by the Bolivian President Luis Arce Catacora in the facilities of the Jose Bolivian Autonomous University of Benin. Let us take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at @teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back From the South. Argentinian Vice President Cristina Fernandez blamed businessmen partisans of Macrism for inciting an assassination attempt on her. In her speech at the plenary meeting of delegates of the Steel Industry Workers Union, Fernandez said that the judiciary wants her to be the accused, but not the victim, evidenced by the justice system failing to make any progress in the investigation. The former Argentinian president recalled that the Macri administration indebted the country to the tune of $45 billion right after President Nestor Kirchner had managed to cancel the debt with the International Monetary Fund. This was the first public appearance of Cristina Fernandez after the assassination attempt against her on September 2nd.
Today is exactly 2 months since you all saw it on television. I also saw it on television. I did not notice the gun that was wielded and was intended to blow my head off. No, I did not see it. The psychiatrists and psychologists said that is much better, because they say that the trauma that remains in people who live at episodes like this one, that they are triggered in the head, they cannot forget it, and it stays with them. They can't forget it and it stays with them for the rest of their lives. Luckily, I don't see it. In all these days, what I can't get out of my head is, what could have happened if he had fired the gun? My children and my grandchildren could have sent that image.
World leaders meet in Egypt on Monday at the COP27 climate summit tasked with taming the terrifying journey of global warming. Participants arrive at the Sharm el-Sheikh Convention Center as the organizers carry out the final preparations for the launch of the November 6th to the 18th Global Climate Summit. Expectations are running high in a world facing deadly floods, record heat waves, and storms. UN warns that there is no credible pathway in place for capping the rising global temperatures under the Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degrees Celsius, while worst-case projections are less dire than a decade ago. Current policies would still see Earth's surface warm a catastrophic 2.8 degrees Celsius and no less than 2.4 degrees Celsius, even if countries made all their carbon-cutting pledges under the Paris Treaty. The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, arrived in Egypt to participate in the COP27 summit. The head of state congratulated the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for organizing the event.
We had a good contact with the delegation that received us on behalf of the government of President el-Sisi. We talked about several issues of the bilateral relationship, and we wished all the success to the government of President el-Sisi for the participation of over 196 countries in this summit on climate change.
In the same context, the Venezuelan president spoke about Venezuela's position on climate change agenda.
Venezuela brings a firm position to accelerate the steps for the fulfillment of the agreements that have already been signed in the past and to speed up the processes so that the destructive capitalist model can be replaced by a humane model, by a responsible model, respectful of the living conditions on the planet.
In Venezuela, the number of deaths due to floods and landslides caused by heavy rains in Puerto La Cruz and Anzoátegui State has increased to 7. According to a press release issued by Luis Marcano, governor of Anzoátegui, in the last hours the bodies of 3 people were found in Valle Verde sector of Puerto La Cruz in the state of Anzoátegui, bringing the total number to 7. The regional president also detailed that some 300 homes have been severely affected by the heavy rains recorded in the area in the last few days, adding that there have been many damages to infrastructure and road closures. He also explained that all the necessary actions have been taken to overcome the emergencies, pointing out that the priority is to protect the needs of those affected. In Guatemala, at least 67 deaths are reported as a consequence of the last rainy season that has taken place in the country. According to a report by the National Coordinating Institution for Disaster Reduction of Guatemala, the departments with the highest number of deaths are Alta Verapaz with 15, Huehuetenango with 12, and Guatemala with 11. According to this institution, in addition, 10 people are reported missing and 41 injured in the current rainy period, while over 1,600 homes suffered severe damage and 336 schools were affected. Also detailed that the rains destroyed 20 highways and caused damage to over 1,300. In addition, 50 bridges were totally devastated and 258 others were partially affected. Meanwhile, in the Dominican Republic, the Emergency Operations Center declared that 12 provinces of the country remain on yellow alert and 9 on green alert due to the storm surge of the country, which killed at least 2 people, while hundreds of others were affected by the rain. The Emergency Operations Center said that the capital of the country experienced the heaviest rains recorded in the last 50 years, which caused extensive material damage. Joe Biden, the President of the United States, promised to close coal-fired power plants one day before the beginning of the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference. During an event in California this Friday, the U.S. President referred to the green transition issue and promised to replace coal-fired power plants in the country with wind and solar power plants. Biden qualified as too costly to maintain coal-fired plants and said that coal plants are not reliable even if the supply of raw material is guaranteed. In that sense, the head of state assured that the substitution of coal-based energy for solar or wind energy will save a lot of money since they will use the same transmission lines. More news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the South. In Russia, oil and gas companies are actively expanding cooperation with Iraq despite the difficult political and military situation in the country. In statements to the press, the economic advisor of the Russian embassy in Baghdad, Ilya Lobov, assured that Russian oil and gas companies are fully fulfilling their contracts with Iraqi partners and plan to develop long-term relations. The Russian diplomat pointed out that Moscow expects to launch in the near future the commercial stage of a promising project called Block 10, which is being implemented by Lukoil. The trade exchange between Russia and Iraq reached $313 billion in 8 months of 2022, exceeding the figures achieved in the whole of 2021. The 5th China International Import-Expo opened on Friday at Shanghai Chinese Financial Center. The 5th edition of the expo, scheduled for November 5th to the 10th in Shanghai, will feature over 2,000 exhibitors from more than 100 countries and regions. It is a trade fair aimed at bringing together government officials with business communities, exhibitors, and professional buyers from all over the world. Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered a video keynote speech at the opening ceremony, saying that China will work hard to create new opportunities for the world.
The 20th China's Communist Party National Congress emphasizes that China will continue to adhere to the basic national policy of opening up, firmly implement the opening up strategy that features mutual benefit and win-win results, stick to the right direction of economic globalization, and enhance the interconnectivity between domestic and international markets and resources, so that China's new development will provide new opportunities for the world and pushes forward the construction of an open global economy.
China actively supports Africa in building industrial supply chains to boost agriculture. In an event focused on agricultural cooperation, representatives of several Chinese embassies in the African continent highlighted this Friday that Africa needs to build industrial and systematic supplies to boost the productive sector. A Chinese diplomatic spokesman pointed out that since the establishment of China-Africa Cooperation Forum in the last 10 years, they have achieved fruitful results in the agricultural sector and have provided tangible benefits to the African people. Foreign ministers from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and from Rwanda arrived at the site of the Angolan government on Saturday for a fresh round of diplomatic talks amid rising tensions in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. Angolan President João Lourenço has been appointed by the African Union as a mediator. Tensions have been particularly high between Kinshasa and Kigali since the resurgence late last year of the March 23 movement, known as M23. The former Tutsi rebellion group took up arms accusing Kinshasa of failing to respect agreements on the demobilization of its combatants. Kinshasa accused Rwanda of supporting this rebellion, a claim Kigali has systematically denied. According to the United Nations, the fighting between the Congo armed forces and the M23 has displaced some 50,000 people since October 20th, of whom 12,000 have sought refuge in Uganda. In Kenya, thousands of passengers were stranded on Saturday morning due to a strike by Kenya Airways pilots. The information was released by the Kenyan Airline Pilots Association, who assured that no aircraft left the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi since 6 a.m. local time. The association's Secretary General, Muriithi Nyaga, said in a statement that the strike is aimed at demanding better wages and will remain in force despite the court order against it. The recently appointed Minister of Transport, Kipchumba Murkomen, told the media that the strike looks like economic sabotage and pointed out that more than 15,000 passengers were affected by the protest. A new group of displaced Syrians left the refugee camps in Lebanon for their homeland. In recent days, dozens of minibuses and trucks have left Arsal in eastern Lebanon and headed towards Syrian borders as part of a repatriation plan promoted by the Syrian government. Citizens took their personal belongings and farm animals with them. Syrian families entered their native country through the border crossing at the Dobuseiya in Homs province and Al-Samrani in Damascus province to return to their towns and villages liberated from terrorism.
It's very reassuring because I'm going back to my parents. It's better than being here, staying at different people's houses every day. I'm going back to my parents. It's better for me.
With great sorrow and outrage, people in South Korea held candlelight vigils and rallies this Saturday to mourn for the 156 victims in a Halloween crowd crush. They were mostly young people, counted among the estimated 100,000 who flocked to Seoul's popular Itaewon Night District to celebrate the first post-pandemic Halloween. Law enforcement officials have accepted that there was insufficient security for such a large crowd, while opposition politicians have accused President Yoon Suk-yeol's government of ignoring the disaster. Thousands gathered in central Seoul at a candlelight vigil organized by a civic group linked to the main opposition party, many of which held signs that read, "Step down Yoon Suk-yeol." The organizers, who have called similar rallies before, said they were holding more vigils in other cities, including Busan and Gwangju. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories from our website at telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.